Ma'am, step back. I said step back.
That document is sensitive.
You don't tell me what my job is. Ma'am, I said step back.
That document is sensitive.
You don't tell me what my job is.
Okay, listen. If you still believe this kind of stuff isn't happening right now in 2025, you're not watching closely enough. But this particular time, they picked the absolute wrong person to mess with. The airport surveillance would eventually capture everything that went down that Friday at 5:19 in the morning. A well-dressed black woman in her early 40s moved across the massive, mostly empty space of Denver International Airport, Concourse B. Designer suit, pristine white silk shirt, those red-bottom Louboutin heels making soft clicks on the shiny floor, a compact silver Rimowa suitcase rolling smoothly behind her like it was weightless. She moved with this quiet confidence that didn't need any announcement. Officer Wendell Clemens stood against a support column, drinking terrible coffee, watching the thin stream of early morning travelers. The second he spotted her, something changed. A tiny grin, his posture shifted. He pushed away from the column and began moving toward her, hand already drifting to his duty belt. What Wendell Clemens had no idea about, like what he absolutely could not have guessed in that exact moment, was that he just basically ended his entire 20-year career right there. One that would strip away his badge, his pension, his good name, and ultimately cost somebody $6.2 million they'd never collect. So, real quick, where are you tuning in from? Comment your city or country below. And if this is your first visit here, smash that subscribe button. Cases like this need to be shared, and every single subscription helps us keep bringing them to you. Jessica Pearson was 42, and she served on the federal bench for the District of Colorado. Youngest black woman ever confirmed in the 10th Circuit's entire history. Before putting on that robe, she'd spent 9 years as an assistant U.S. attorney, personally taking down crooked sheriffs, compromised FBI agents, and more than one officer who believed the Constitution had certain geographic exceptions. She understood the Fourth Amendment like artists understand color theory. She understood probable cause, reasonable suspicion, and every single maneuver cops pull when they've got neither. And she absolutely understood when somebody was about to trample her constitutional rights in front of 30 high-definition security cameras. That particular morning, she was flying to Oxford, not for pleasure. She'd been specifically invited to give the keynote address at the Global Justice Symposium 36 hours away in the very auditorium where Mandela had once addressed a crowd. Her speech title, When the System Forgets Its Own Rules. Yeah, that irony would land like a bomb later on. Wendell Clemens planted himself right in her path near the boarding area. No introduction, no explanation. Just this cold, ma'am, stop right there. Jessica slowed down, composed, almost intrigued. She inquired if something was wrong. He brushed off the question, asked where she was heading. She responded London, exactly what the departure screen displayed. He requested her boarding pass, barely looked at the phone screen she presented, then demanded identification. She produced her driver's license. He examined it slowly like he was inspecting currency for counterfeits. Asked her address, asked about her occupation. She replied calmly, I work in the federal courts. He made this little scoffing sound, like that was some punchline only he appreciated. All around them, passengers continued flowing. A white tech guy in Patagonia and flip-flops breezed past carrying a North Face bag the size of a corpse. An elderly white couple wrestling 4 enormous suitcases moved toward the exit, and Clemens didn't even glance their way. Jessica observed. Obviously, she observed. Observation had kept her breathing in courtrooms packed with men who despised losing to her. Then, the word she'd been anticipating arrived. I need to inspect your bag. She understood random checks occur. She also understood this wasn't remotely random. Still, she had nothing illegal, and she had 36 hours to reach Oxford. So she moved aside, set the Rimowa on the metal examination table, and discreetly hit record on her phone, holding it chest high, completely legal under Colorado law. Clemens unzipped the luggage like he was opening evidence in a capital case. Folded silk sleepwear exposed for strangers to witness. La Perla undergarments placed beside a stack of Oxford presentation notes. Then the sealed manila folder marked in bright red, confidential, judicial eyes only. Jessica moved to shield it from public exposure. Clemens seized her wrist forcefully and jerked. "You don't instruct me on how to do my job," he snapped, volume high enough for half the terminal to catch. Her phone continued recording. A 17-year-old nearby had already started live streaming on TikTok. Eyes huge, whispering, "Y'all, this is insane." More devices emerged. Clemens informed Jessica she was being held for questionable conduct. She inquired, extremely courteously, what conduct specifically. He had no response, just restated that she needed to accompany him for additional screening. She asked whether she was under arrest. He said negative. She asked whether she was free to go. He said negative again. She allowed the silence to settle there, dense, while the audience expanded. By the time a supervisor eventually strolled over, 23 minutes had elapsed. Her London flight was already pulling away from the gate. The supervisor surveyed the situation, gave her a card with a QR code, and mumbled something about submitting a complaint digitally if she wanted. Jessica departed without speaking, located a secluded section of the Admiral's Club, opened her moleskin, and began documenting. 5:19 a.m. Officer badge number 417, Wendell Clemens. 5:21. Initial contact, no articulable suspicion provided. 5:27, physical battery, left wrist. 5:34, unlawful detention captured on video. She documented until the page overflowed. Meticulous, time-stamped, devastating. During the entire 47-minute ordeal, Jessica never once sets her phone down or stops recording, even when Clemens tries to block the lens with his hand. When that frame gets paused and enlarged in court, you can hear someone in the jury box whisper "Jesus" under their breath. Jessica never points it out herself. She doesn't have to. The picture does the talking. By the time she boarded the overnight flight 6 hours afterward, the TikTok video had 400,000 views and was exploding. The internet was already posing the identical question she'd asked herself the instant Clemens smirked at her across that terminal. Who exactly did he just physically grab? 11 days afterward, an email appeared in Jessica's inbox at 4:17 p.m. Subject line, resolution of complaint. The body contained exactly 2 sentences. The matter has been thoroughly investigated. No violations of policy or procedure were found. No name, just an automated footer from Denver International Airport Police Internal Affairs. Jessica read it once, shut the laptop, and permitted herself precisely 3 seconds of stillness. Then she forwarded the message to Elena Ramirez with one line, "We're ready." The following morning, the airport issued a carefully constructed press release. A scheduled firmware update had regrettably corrupted video archives throughout Concourse B for that entire week. Technical malfunction. Nothing recoverable. Unfortunate, but these situations occur. Anyone who's ever handled federal discovery recognized that as a massive lie. Elena Ramirez didn't waste energy on subpoenas initially. She simply lifted the phone, placed 3 calls, and 48 hours afterward, Jessica had a court reporter scheduled and a conference room at the Brown Palace downtown. Press conference morning. Jessica emerged from the black Suburban wearing the identical charcoal designer suit from the footage, shoes gleaming, hair secured in the same low bun. 60 cameras awaited on the federal courthouse steps. Microphones clustered like metallic blooms. She walked directly to the podium, placed a long garment bag across the table, and unzipped it deliberately. The black judicial robe unfurled like a war banner. She slipped it on one sleeve, then the other, and allowed it to drape over the identical suit the entire nation now recognized. The space went so silent you could hear shutters clicking. She leaned in, just slightly. United States District Judge Jessica Pearson. That was the first moment most of America heard the name connected to the woman Clemens had grabbed. She pressed play on the remote. The 17-year-old's TikTok occupied the enormous screen behind her, then transitioned seamlessly into Jessica's personal phone recording. Sharp, unwavering, crushing. 47 minutes of degradation in 4K. When the footage concluded, there wasn't a single sound in that space. That identical afternoon, Elena Ramirez entered the clerk's office and submitted Pearson versus Clemens, City and County of Denver, and Denver International Airport. Section 1983. Monell liability, battery, false imprisonment, equal protection. The complaint stretched 72 pages and read like a prosecutor's final argument. 72 hours afterward, the floodgates opened. A TSA red team inspector, somebody whose literal function is identifying security vulnerabilities, couldn't stomach the cover-up. He duplicated the actual concourse master file to an encrypted drive, delivered it personally to the Denver Post, and vanished on leave. By daybreak, the uncorrupted footage was universal. 87 million views before midday. Hashtags multiplied exponentially. Then the testimonies flooded in. 68 within the first week. A pediatric cardiac surgeon who missed a 9-year-old's transplant surgery because Clemens detained her for 53 minutes regarding suspicious medical scrubs. A sitting Colorado congressman returning from D.C., a Grammy-winning R&B artist heading to the Grammys, every single one black, every single one professionally dressed, every single one treated like criminals. Somebody else, nobody ever confessed, who released 3 years of airport police Slack archives. Channel designation, Concourse B break room. Clemens's messages glowed radioactive. Hard R used the way people do when they assume nobody's monitoring. Keep the animals in, coach. Designer bag on her equals someone paid or she's trafficking. Another one assumes she's important, followed by laugh reactions from half a dozen colleagues. By Friday evening, Wendell Clemens was on paid administrative leave, which only intensified the fury. The airport distributed a statement saturated with phrases like deeply regret and ongoing review and isolated incident. The internet responded with fire emojis and documentation. Jessica sat in her chambers that evening, lights dimmed, monitoring the numbers surge. Not with satisfaction, not yet. Just the steady, patient awareness that the silence she'd received 11 days earlier had just transformed into the loudest noise in the nation. The tempest had touched down, and it was merely beginning. Jessica closed the laptop that evening and allowed the city's low vibration to fill the chambers. The tempest had touched down, and it was merely beginning. Discovery commenced like a precision implosion. 11 previous complaints against Wendell Clemens emerged in the initial document release. 9 of them from black professionals. A trauma surgeon, a federal prosecutor, a 2-star Army general in dress uniform, every single one marked unfounded within 48 hours, occasionally 24. No interviews conducted, no declarations recorded, just a supervisor's initials and a silent interment. Then arrived the deposition in a windowless space on the 16th floor. Clemens sat under oath, necktie overly constricting, perspiring before the camera even activated. Elena Ramirez began gently, almost sympathetically, requested he explain the justification for the stop. He leaned toward the microphone, voice monotone, and uttered the words that obliterated whatever remained of his career. Based on my training and experience, I can consistently identify when they're uppity. Expensive suit, designer luggage, red bottoms typically indicates somebody else purchased it or she's transporting something she shouldn't. The court reporter's fingers paused for half a heartbeat. The stenograph device captured every syllable. 8 months afterward, the Byron G. Rogers Federal Courthouse filled before dawn. 8-day trial. Jury of 8 women, 4 men, 3 black, 2 Latino, 7 white. They sat expressionless through opening statements. Jessica testified for 4 hours spanning 2 afternoons. 0 notes. 0 theatrics. Just the facts in chronological order, delivered in the identical measured voice she employed when sentencing violent criminals. She described the grip on her wrist, the precise pressure, the way her Louboutin heel had scraped backward half an inch on the flooring. She described the sealed judicial document exposed for strangers. She described the moment she realized her departure was gone and the keynote would need to be delivered via Zoom from a Heathrow hotel at 3 a.m. When she descended, the courtroom felt 10 degrees colder. The Slack messages were vocalized individually, one by one, by a paralegal with 0 emotion. The N-word surfaced 17 times in one thread. The phrase, "keep the animals in coach," produced an audible gasp from juror number 6. The pediatric cardiac surgeon testified next. Described to the jury the 9-year-old waiting on the operating table in Aurora while she stood handcuffed to a bench for 53 minutes because Clemens disapproved of how she responded to questions. The child coded twice. didn't survive. Clemens dropped his face into his palms and remained that way for the remainder of the day. The statistician required only 12 slides. Clemens searched black women at 21 times the rate of white women with identical baggage profiles. Contraband discovery rate? 0.4% across both demographics. The statistics hung in the atmosphere like vapor. Closing arguments lasted 90 minutes combined. The jury departed at 3:47 p.m. on a Thursday. They returned at 9:12 the following morning. Foreperson rose. We find for the plaintiff on all counts. Compensatory damages, $800,000. Punitive, $6.2 million. Largest single officer racial profiling judgment in the nation's history. Clemens produced a sound somewhere between choking and sobbing, collapsed forward until his forehead contacted the defense table. 48 hours afterward, the termination letter was hand-delivered. Peace officer certification revoked by post that same week. Unemployable in any uniform from Alaska to Florida. The consequences continued spreading. Airport police chief retired to spend time with family 3 days following the verdict. 2 deputy chiefs departed within a month. The Department of Justice launched a pattern or practice investigation, and 6 weeks afterward, Denver International Airport signed a consent decree, 5 years of federal oversight, body cameras on every officer, civilian oversight board with subpoena authority, mandatory bias training, audited quarterly. A 10-foot digital screen now dominates the precise location in Concourse B where Jessica once stood. Date, time, a brief paragraph. And the new policy in 4 languages. 1 year later, the Senate confirmed Jessica Pearson to the United States Court of Appeals for the 10th Circuit, 87-11. She took the oath in the identical robing room Thurgood Marshall once utilized. Wendell Clemens lost the Aurora house to foreclosure. Relocated to a single-wide trailer outside Rawlins, Wyoming, where the closest grocery is 43 miles of 2-lane highway. The for sale sign on his former lawn remained up for 14 months. The Pearson Justice Initiative opened its doors with the punitive award minus $1, the dollar Jessica preserved in a frame on her new desk. 49 airport cases in 18 months. 41 resolved in favor of the traveler. And then arrived the morning she returned to DIA, now Judge Pearson of the 10th Circuit, black robe exchanged for a Navy trench, boarding pass to Geneva in hand. Officers at the checkpoint spotted her approaching. Posture corrected. Eyes lowered. Conversations ceased mid-sentence. She traversed the length of Concourse B at the identical unhurried pace she'd employed that first morning. Stopped beneath the digital screen. Glanced up once. Offered the smallest nod, nearly invisible. Then continued walking. The boarding announcement for her flight resonated overhead. She never glanced backward. Months have elapsed since the verdict, and the airport feels transformed now, quieter in a manner that has nothing to do with noise level. Jessica Pearson, Circuit Judge Pearson to the clerks, who still can't process that she answers their panic calls, herself traverses Concourse B the way generals traverse former battlefields, familiar, respectful, fearless. The digital wall still illuminates, with the date, the policy, and now a small bronze marker beneath it that simply states, because one traveler refused to look away. She travels more these days. Geneva, The Hague, Johannesburg. Locations where people keep requesting she tell the story as if she hasn't recounted it sufficiently. She consistently says the identical thing. The story isn't hers anymore. It belongs to the 68 who followed her and to the hundreds who never needed to. The Pearson Justice Initiative relocated from the donated loft into legitimate offices on the 16th floor of the Byron Rogers building, the identical floor where Clemens once perspired through his deposition. They maintain a running tally on the website, 127 cases accepted, 104 resolved favorably. Thorough the feats. Every settlement check gets photographed, framed, and displayed in the corridor like wanted posters in reverse. Wendell Clemens surfaced once on a true crime subreddit, posting from a throwaway account that he was the casualty of a woke witch hunt. The thread locked in 11 minutes. Somebody doxed the trailer park. He vanished again. Rumor suggests he pumps gas outside Rock Springs under a name nobody there cares enough to recall. Jessica still carries the identical silver Rimowa. The identical moleskin rides in the front compartment, though the pages are mostly empty now. She doesn't need to document everything anymore. She understands what she witnessed. She understands what she accomplished. Sometimes, late at night, in whatever city the circuit has dispatched her to, she'll open her phone and scroll back to the original bystander footage. 400 million views and climbing. She never watches past the moment Clemens seizes her wrist. She doesn't need to. She was present. The comments still accumulate, thousands every week. Young women, predominantly black, predominantly traveling solo for the first time, posting selfies in airports with the caption, "Channeling Judge Pearson today." Some of them tag her. She likes every single one. There is a new custom at DIA now, one nobody orchestrated and nobody dares interrupt. When a black woman in a professional suit or a college student with fresh braids or a grandmother in church heels gets signaled over for random screening, another traveler, sometimes a stranger, sometimes someone who understands exactly what year it is, will quietly exit the line, phone elevated, recording, just in case. The officers observe it occur. They sense the weight of all those lenses. Most wave the traveler through without speaking. Jessica notices on the uncommon mornings she's home and flying commercial. She never intervenes anymore. She doesn't need to. The simple fact of her walking past in heels that still produce the identical rhythm is sufficient. Shoulders relax. Commands soften. The atmosphere shifts. She still gets recognized, obviously. A gate agent will slide her into the priority lane without asking. A pilot once halted boarding an entire aircraft to shake her hand. She accepts the small courtesies with the identical calm nod she once offered the digital wall. Authority, she has discovered, isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just a woman in a charcoal suit who refuses to diminish herself by 1 inch, walking through a terminal that once attempted to make her feel insignificant, knowing the ground itself remembers who prevailed. And somewhere in every airport in America, another officer glances up at a monitor, observes a well-dressed black woman approaching, and just for a second feels the temperature drop. That's all the memorial she ever desired. This is the end of the story. If you made it this far, drop a comment letting us know what you think. Should more officers be held accountable like this? Let's talk about it. And make sure you subscribe for real cam footages that expose racism, corruption, and injustice.